Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast, We're Keys to Diabetes. Today we have a collaboration with Boost Control. If you guys like to introduce yourselves.
Hi guys, I'm Shani.
Hi everyone, I'm Eliza.
Hi everyone, I'm Shahira.
So if you guys didn't watch our other podcast, what we're going to do is talk about a few studies. There we're looking at the link between type 2 diabetes and alcohol consumption. So the first of which is actually another study that was found on a media outlet called The Evening Standard. This one looked at saying how 2 alcoholic drinks a day could reduce the risk of diabetes. What do you guys think so far of the study?
I'm unsure about it. I think it's, although it's a study, it's kind of encouraging bad practice for the public.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely encouraging. Well, it's not very clear. It just says, consume this much alcohol.
Yeah.
But let's look into it. So it was actually done by the Harvard School of Public Health in the Netherlands. And it said that only occasionally drinking can appear to reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes by increasing alcohol consumption to about 1 to 2 servings of beer, wine, or liquor a day. So again, there's not much information behind it. It just briefly tells you to drink 1 or 2 drinks a day.
Yeah.
It's not the best.
I think what highlights is the fact that it said 1 serving. A serving to someone is relative.
Mhm.
What is a serving for?
Subjective, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
It would sort of be on the packaging of the thing you're drinking, but it doesn't mention how many units. So
Yeah.
I feel like because
I
this
think
is an
it's very
American
vague.
study, I don't believe they use units. They have a different way of measuring the alcohol. This research was done over 38,000 middle-aged American men enrolled across a 20-year period of study, which is quite
Wow.
crazy, from 1986 to 2006, and they were questionnaires every 4 years. So they would track the alcohol change in consumption and in the development of risk of diabetes. Again, it doesn't exactly say anything about how they measured the risk of diabetes. That's the thing. Evening Standard, not the best of studies. It tells you drink alcohol, but it's not very clear about it. Alright guys, let's move on to another one. So this one is by the Journal of Epidemiology. It's a peer-reviewed journal and it talks about alcohol consumption and the risk of diabetes in East Asian populations. This one's saying that it tries to correlate between healthy alcohol consumption and unhealthy alcohol consumption. So what do you guys think? Like, as part of your campaign, would you say that there is a type of a healthy limit, or is it all alcohol is unhealthy? What would you guys would say?
So we're going with our 14 units a week
Mhm.
Yeah.
with 2 consecutive free alcohol days a week.
Cool.
And there were certain types of alcohol that we would kind of not recommend. Was it wine that was quite high in calories?
Yeah, for those, I think when you're drinking alcohol as a diabetic, carb counting becomes
Very
very important,
yeah,
essentially.
and it becomes more complicated if you do choose to drink, because I don't think a lot of people are aware that different alcoholic beverages have a different amount of calories.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, so like beer obviously has a lot more calories than, say, a spirit like
I
vodka.
think
or-
wine was how many? 186?
Yeah,
196?
158, I think.
158?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, mad. Just for like a glass of wine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your standard
It's
glass.
basically like a banana.
So yeah, this particular study talks about the difference in breaking down of the alcohol using different enzymes and how some different genetics may be able to metabolize the alcohol quicker. So it means that breaking down of the alcohol is quicker for women than it is for men, it says. And it differs in terms of your alcohol consumption, sex, and ethnicity as well. So what this study did, it looked at the correlation between alcohol consumption and the prevalence of impaired fasting glucose. So anyone who had diabetes was excluded from the study, which I find quite odd, because obviously if you're trying to look at the correlation between diabetes
Yeah.
and alcohol, you should probably include
Include
people
them,
who have
yeah.
diabetes, but it seems like they didn't do any of that. But yeah, so what do you guys think so far of the study?
I think it's more robust than the previous
Definitely.
evidence.
It's a lot more valid so far.
Yeah.
It goes to say that there's a higher risk level of consumption was associated with a higher prevalence of IFG, which is the fasting glucose values in both men and women. And then it also says that at least 7 drinks per sitting in men and 5 drinks per sitting in women was defined as high risk.
And also that's binge drinking if you do it in one go. So that could be the reason why there's a high risk.
Mhm.
And this is quite biased as only in East Asians, so
Exactly.
maybe
It's-
the ethnicity could affect it.
Definitely. It's not really a broad study. It was just done in East Asian populations. It does go on to say, which I find quite a bold statement, is that modest levels of alcohol intake, regular drinking was associated with lower levels of diabetes prevalence in women compared with rare consumption. So for women who don't consume any alcohol or very rarely, they have a much higher prevalence of diabetes. But yeah, I feel like it's a bit more robust, as you said. But again, there's still a lot of gaps to be filled out. And yeah, and then it just goes on to summarize the fact that it does compare, like you guys said before, 14 units of alcohol in the United Kingdom, and it does compare the different alcohol units and the consumption that is required in different countries. What do you guys think? Do you guys know anything about, what, in terms of the UK, obviously we recommend 14 units of alcohol. Do you know anything about other countries or?
It says here maximum 1 day of 1 drink per day in the Netherlands.
Okay. If you guys were to implement, say, like a suggestion, what would you guys recommend in terms of alcohol consumption? Would you say
A diabetic, for example.
for a diabetic? Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I think the healthiest is to drink the least amount of alcohol as you can. But if you do choose to drink, there is no such thing as a safe level of drinking alcohol. You can only really lower your risk, because I know we're discussing about the risk of the risk of getting diabetes. However, we also have to think about the other risk factors in alcohol. With drinking alcohol,
definitely.
Liver disease,
liver disease, pancreatitis. So although that's the other evening standard says to drink 2 units of alcohol a day, it's not really the best, because you may be decreasing your risk of diabetes, but you're increasing your risk of heart disease, mental illness.
Very valid point. But then, would you say that all alcohol consumption is bad alcohol?
No, I mean, people drink for different reasons. Beliefs can also play a big part in your perception of alcohol, and we're not saying to completely get rid of alcohol in your diet, but I think reducing it.
Just be aware of how much you're drinking.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Probably with meals, and be careful with medications like metformin.
Definitely.
If you have with metformin, it can cause lactic acidosis. So maybe tell them they can drink, but just be cautious.
Cool. That's a very valid point again. So yeah, as you guys say, we have some alcoholic experts on our team, so and they're giving us all the advice.
What can we say?
I'm not trying to say you all drink excessive amounts, but
So guys, what's your take-home messages from all of this?
So number 1, consume moderate alcohol.
Yeah, so moderation would be up to 14 units a week with at least 2 alcohol-free days consecutively.
Yeah, but then for patients that want to still drink alcohol whilst on medication, we'd offer them to drink low alcohol drinks and drinks that have low sugar content.
Yeah, so for example, if you've got a cocktail, opt for a tonic instead of lemonade.
Yeah, easy swap.
Yeah.
cool.
Great.
And what we said something else
About medication as well. So we know that there's a lot of interactions between diabetic medications and alcohol. What do you guys know about this?
So if you're on insulin or sulfonylureas, they both lower your blood glucose. So by having alcohol as well, it will lower your blood glucose even more, and they can get a hypo.
Hypoglycemia.
So make sure they're aware of the signs of hypo, like sweating, feeling dizzy, and obviously carry maybe glucose with them when they're on a night out.
And what to do
Glucose.
in that situation of hypo, make sure they're aware of what the best things to do.
Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Just great advice.
Make everyone aware around them that they're diabetic. And
And that obviously goes for type 1 as well as type 2.
Definitely.
Not just for type 2. I know we're a public health campaign primarily on type 2 diabetes, but this advice is for both type 1 and type 2. For anyone who's watching who is type 1. But thank you very much for listening,
very much,
guys.
guys.
Thanks everyone for listening.
you.
Hope you enjoyed it. And thank you very much.